Welcome back. I'm really excited to go through this section with you. See, this is the section that talks about why we buy. Why would we buy a soil moisture probe at all? Why would we buy a CRM probe, continuous root zone monitoring? See, this is extremely important to be able to answer. Every farmer is going to have a little bit different reason on why they would buy a sensor. Some may be facing nitrogen challenges. Some may be facing soil structure issues. Some may be facing something that maybe we've never even heard of before. But the most important thing is to understand what their concerns are. Once we know them, then we can start answering them. So we'll talk a lot more in further detail about asking questions and getting right feedback from the farmers in another video. But right now, I want to bring back the standard. I want to go in and dive into the why from the agronomic perspective. Now, in this picture, you're going to see a couple of different things. Number one, let's take a look at the top left. This is just a reference to what we're looking at in the pie charts and in the root zone. The green regions, let's start there. This green pie chart, this green root zone, it all represents 12 inches below the surface of the ground. So that top 12 inches is very, very, very critical in the early stages of development. It makes sense. We're planting a seed at 2 inches. It doesn't matter what farmer it is. Maybe they're 1.5 inches, maybe they're 2 inches, but every single farmer is going to plant a seed in the top of the profile. Now, that profile then is responsible to give nutrients and water into that plant in the early stages. Common sense, we know that. But the real question is, when do we start drawing water out at the 12 to 24 inch root zone? You see, that root is designed to go deep. It's designed to seek out water, which means two things have to exist. Number one, there has to be deep water. And number two, we have to have a soil condition, a soil structure that's conducive to allowing the roots to go deep. So we need moisture, we need oxygen, we need all these components to allow for a deep root system. So the real question that we need to ask farmers is, when do we start irrigating to make sure that we either enhance or encourage root development? What are the processes that we should use in the early stages of irrigation? So let's think about that. How would we ask a farmer that question? Well, one of the things that I do is I'll ask, which is more important, application rate or application timing? The reality is both are extremely important. But the most important element is to make sure that we put the right rate on at the right time to get the root system to develop. You see too much water too soon, and we can hinder root development. We can hinder it because the roots will be very satisfied in the top 12 inches, and then it actually just won't root deep. It won't get strong in that deep profile. So really what we have to watch for with a sensor, see, when we put a sensor in and we're watching that plant grow, we're watching that root develop, now all of a sudden we know exactly how deep in the profile we're pulling water. See, this is one of the things we don't know when we walk a field. When we take a hand probe and pull dirt out of the ground, we have no idea where the roots are. Knowing where the roots are is extremely important, especially before we get to tassel. When we hit the tassel phase, especially in growing corn, soybeans are a little bit different, but they still have their phases. When we hit tassel, we need to be at that 12 to 24 inch root zone, pulling out about 30% of our water down there. That's really what we're looking for. We're pulling out about 30% of the water at 12 to 24, about 70% on the top end. You see, if we don't have a really healthy root zone down there, the top profile is responsible for everything. And that's a lot of stress on the top of our profile. If we can get those roots into that deeper water, into that deeper part of the profile, it maintains a lot easier irrigation season. It maintains a lot easier way of infiltrating water and keeping the oxygen levels high. When we're managing just the top foot, it's really, really hard to do that. Now, if we're going to get a really healthy crop and we're going to get a really great result here during this peak water use curve, this black line is our water use curve. And when it is at its absolute highest, we should be pulling about 15% or so of our water out of the really deep root zone. That's that 24 to 36, maybe even down to 40 inches. We want to be able to pull water out of that region. Does that really matter? Oh, it matters a lot, my friend, because this is the time of year that you cannot keep up typically. See, this red line indicates what an average center pivot can apply in the state of Nebraska or in Kansas. We're an 900 gallon a minute well system. That's about what we can apply in any given field, depending on the size of the field and well capacity. But the big challenge is this black line, water use curve. Now, just imagine for a moment if we have 12 inches of root zone and we have to account all of this water out of that 12 inches and out of our well. That's hard to do. If we've got deep water, though, and we've got deep roots, which the probe is going to show us, now we know we're going to have a lot less stress in that August time frame, early September, maybe, late July. Those are the times that we normally see a lot of stress and we have to just keep irrigating. Well, when we're managing how the plants are growing, how fast the roots develop, if the roots can develop, we're seeing soil structure, infiltration rates of water. When we start to see all of that in one place using the probes, now all of a sudden we know, we're very confident that we have a root system, we have access to water, we have a system in place to get us through the most critical time of production. My friends, I have seen 30 to 40 bushel yield losses by not getting this part right. This is one of the places that a probe pays for itself every single time, is in the process of developing a root system and recognizing where those roots are, where the water is, and learning how to manage not just irrigation, but every aspect of that root zone. It's important to understand so that we get our decisions right. You see, when we start thinking about the long-term play with continuous root zone monitoring, we're not just watching irrigation, we're watching that entire root system. If we have an irrigation season where our roots are shallow and we're struggling to keep up and it just is one of those stressful years, we're going to really focus in the fall time and in the early spring. What do we have to do to get that soil structure, to get that soil profile conducive to a deeper root system for healthier, stronger roots? See, this is the reason behind a probe. A probe is simply there to help us manage, to learn, and change what needs to be changed in order to develop a stronger root zone system. The stronger the root, the bigger the fruit, the healthier the plants, the less disease we're going to have, the less chemical it's going to be required. These are all things that we can learn using a probe. We're going to learn some of that in our next video as we start looking at the actual data that we're seeing. What is the data that we're looking at? Once we start seeing the plant data in the probe graphs, my friends, it's a game changer. So let's go look at the plant data and let's learn how to grow a healthy, profitable crop.